Are you over 50 and wondering what happened?
All the time.
Sometimes I look in the mirror and wonder, who's that old fart?
Yeah, I wondered that about you too.
Listen as CJ and I stumble through the wonderful world of being over 50.
Like the stereotypes of being grumpy, forgetful, and technologically inept.
And don't get me started on the mystery muscle pain.
Actually, my shoulder does hurt.
And we'll talk about other joys of ageing, like funding retirement, mailing a stool sample, and working with millennials.
Join us on the downhill run to the old folks' home.
Welcome to What's My Age Again?
This is me, Scott.
And this is me, CJ. Welcome to What's My Age Again. So, what have we got this episode, Scott?
Well, for the last 3 episodes, we've been banging on and on and on and on about how 50-year-old men feel about ageing. Well, I got to wondering, do men and women experience ageing in the same way?
It's an interesting question. How do you intend to answer said question?
Well, as is my wont, I did some research into gender differences in ageing. But then I decided to go one better. Research and secondary sources are great, but I thought it'd be better to go to a primary source.
Ah, yes, like tomato or barbecue.
No, I decided to interview an actual woman.
That sounds awesome. When are we doing this interview?
Well, look, CJ, it's like this. I kind of went behind your back and I did an interview the other day. I hope you're okay with this.
Can't see any reason why I wouldn't be okay with you doing an interview without me. So my mistake, I thought it was What's My Age Again with CJ and Scott. But welcome everyone to What's My Age Again with Scott.
Yes, and occasionally CJ.
So tell us about this wonderful interview that you apparently were unable to get in contact with me to invite me to. No, I'm not bitter. Go on.
Well, I have a Twitter friend, Sheila E. Young, and she's the author of a book called Mac, which is available on Amazon and wherever all good Amazon books are sold.
Generally Amazon, yep.
Yes. And she had been very open on Twitter about her age, and I thought, what an interesting person for our podcast. So I thought, I'll cut CJ out of this, and I'll just get her in and talk to her for a change.
It's your honesty I admire most in this situation. Doesn't make me feel any better for being left out, but...
No, fair enough. Well, it's a bold departure for our podcast to have interviews, I think. So I think it's worth a try.
That's true. It's a bold departure for you to actually have contact with women. So
I wish I could say that was wrong.
Listeners, keep an ear out for episode 6, Scott Goes Dating.
There's a lot of information there. Just you wait, CJ. Anyway, so we were thinking, well, I was thinking.
You weren't thinking, I'll contact CJ because we've got this interview to do.
Well, yeah. I wasn't thinking that because I did this interview at 6 o'clock in the morning.
Oh, fuck, yes. Oh, well, that makes perfect sense. Yep. All right. Let's just move on.
Fair enough. It was 2 o'clock in the afternoon for Sheila because she's in Canada. But yeah, 6 o'clock in the morning for me. But anyway, I thought there was a kind of symmetry to this because we were talking about how do men and women experience aging in the same way. And of course, Sheila is a woman. And if you have ever been to Australia, Sheila is a slang word for woman. So I thought we could do an episode called What Do Sheilas Think About Aging?
While I applaud this bold departure from our usual podcast format, I'm not sure that anybody actually says Sheila anymore.
Well,
Scott.
Yeah, that's true. Probably the last person who used the word Sheila would have been Steve Irwin. And you know what happened to him.
I'm not sure that being stabbed in the heart by a stingray is the usual response to calling someone Sheila. Hey, Sheila, stab. Although depends on what parts of Sydney you hang around in, I guess.
But yeah, anyway, Sheila, so I mean, okay, even though it's not a commonly used word in Australia anymore, it's still pretty funny, isn't it?
Is it though? It's true. Is it?
You got. Let's hear me out, because the subject for our interview is not only a Sheila. I'm interviewing someone called Sheila. Like I said, Sheila E. Young, the author of the novel Mac.
Isn't she a 1980s pop artist?
This is a different Sheila E.
Sorry, my mistake. I would have known that had I been invited to the interview that occurred without me. But carry on.
I can edit your reactions into the interview if you like.
Okay, hang on, let me just do it here. Oh my God, that's so interesting. Really, Sheila? I didn't think that would happen. Oh my God. No, that's a bit boring. Can we move on now? Feel free to use any of those. Just drop them in as you
You
see
don't
fit.
think I will?
I dare you.
I'm sick of editing, but I'll do it just to do that.
But it'll just be all of them after one sentence. It's the most confusing response ever.
So, what's happening in You're Not Helping this episode, CJ?
So 5:30, you say you had to get up. Jesus Christ, that was yeah. I probably wouldn't have. I would have liked to have had the option to have turned down getting up for this interview. There's a thing called. Have you heard of a thing called Quora? I don't know, but Quora.
I have. Yeah, I don't know how to say it either, but for some reason I keep getting emails from them. I must have subscribed to them accidentally one time.
So there's essentially you ask questions and people provide you answers. Yes, unsurprisingly, there's lots of questions about what's it like to turn 50, and some not particularly helpful.
And so that's You're Not Helping for us. Fair enough. Before we get to the interview with Sheila, though,
That's the one that I wasn't invited to. Just checking, just confirming that there's not another one that.
Sheila had a rider in her contract that you weren't allowed to be involved.
Yeah, that seems reasonable. That's moving on.
Before we have the interview with Sheila, I want to have a look at what the research says about the differences between men and women as we age. And while there are many similarities between how men and women experience aging, there are also some reasonably significant differences. Here are some of the ways which aging can differ between the sexes. Okay, hormonal changes. Okay, now I'm going to not make too many cheap shots here, but I will just read the information. Women experience more rapid decline in hormone production than men, especially during menopause.
What was number 2?
Muscle and bone mass. Men usually experience less muscle and bone loss as they age.
That makes sense. I haven't forgotten where I've put in my femur for a long time. So.
Skin aging. Men's skin typically ages more slowly than women's due to differences in hormone levels and skin structure. I'm not quite sure what the skin structure is, but I didn't look that deeply.
Well, you were probably tired from being up at 5:30 for an interview that I wasn't invited to. What was number 4?
Life expectancy. Women typically live longer than men, so there's one for the ladies, even though they've last 3 they've not done quite so well. But when we start looking at cognitive aging, so that there's some more significant differences, I think. Mental health. According to some research, women are more likely than men to experience depression and anxiety as they age. But on the plus side, a University of Melbourne research study found that women are happier later in life, particularly from 50 years old through to 70, possibly because their husbands have died. For many women, this appears to be related to the positivity around me time as they wind down from full-time work and family responsibilities. Cognitive decline. Okay, studies have shown that women tend to outperform men on tests of verbal memory and fluency, even as they age. However, men may have an advantage in tasks that require spatial ability and mental rotation, whatever that means.
Is that just like spinning around until you fall over?
If you're spinning around, everyone thinks you're mental.
Yeah.
The risk of dementia.
Speaking of, nice segue.
Women are more likely than men to develop Alzheimer's disease, but this may be due to women living longer than men on average. Because maybe if men could extend their lifespans, they could look forward to having Alzheimer's disease as well.
Fair enough.
Okay, but men who get dementia tend to die quicker. Who knows?
They keep forgetting where they put their femur and fall over.
It could be that. Coping strategies. Some studies suggest that men and women may use different coping strategies to deal with cognitive decline. Women may be more likely to use problem solving and social support, so they'll talk to their friends. I don't know where I lost my femur. Have you seen it?
Well, technically, it'd be, have you seen my husband's femur?
Men may be more likely to withdraw or deny there is a problem. What femur? I've lost my femur.
What?
Men aged 50 to 54 were the highest age group under 80 for suicide. Although men over 80, I think they just lose the will to live and just top themselves at an incredible rate.
Took a sudden turn downwards. Number 5?
Yeah. Brain structure. Researchers found some differences in the way men's and women's brains age. Men may experience more shrinkage, and if you've ever seen the Seinfeld episode where George has been in the cold water, we'll know what shrinkage is. Shrinkage in the grey matter of the brain. Now, the grey matter is where the processing is done in your brain, okay? Whereas women may experience more changes in the white matter, which is the matter that makes you racist. No, it's actually the matter that organises communication between the grey matter and the rest of the body. So men stop being able to think and women stop being able to transfer their thoughts to parts of their body.
Right. So as an example of men may experience more shrinkage in the grey matter of their brain, saying things like women may experience changes in the white matter, which is where the racist part is.
Fair enough. It's important to note, though, that these differences are based on generalisations, surprisingly, and genetic, environmental and lifestyle factors may play a significant role in cognitive ageing. Okay? That's our rider on this. We're not going to live and die by these things. This is just something we read.
Well, we may live and die by losing a femur.
That's true. That's true.
All right, anyway, enough of this secondhand research rubbish. I haven't needed any of this kind of stuff to get me through my career to where I am these days. Let's find out what women really think about being over 50. Over to you, Scott. Not Scott and CJ, just pointing that out one more time.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Fair enough. Well, it's now time to talk to my friend, Sheila E. Young, author of the novel Mac and all-round good egg, about her feelings about ageing.
No, I don't like eggs, so... Hi, Sheila.
So I'm here with Sheila E. Young, the author of Mac, and she's agreed to talk to me about being over 50.
Being ancient.
Being ancient. Well, I always thought with you it might be young by name, young by nature, but who knows?
Oh, for sure.
For sure. Yeah. So we met each other on Twitter.
I was joking on Twitter, actually. I was going to make you do all the talking in this because I love the Australian accent. So I was going to start giving you monosyllabic responses so that you would have to talk most of the talking.
Oh, well, please don't do that. That would be really boring.
Okay.
Full disclosure, Sheila is wearing a Cleopatra wig. It's a bit of a throwback to a promotion she did for my book. So I really appreciate that. You can't see it, but...
It's on.
It's doing it for me.
Good.
Excellent. So Sheila, just tell me a little bit about yourself. How would you describe yourself briefly?
I think my number one job would be mom. I'm mom of 3, so that would be my first descriptor. I've done a lot of things in the past. I used to work for a resort down south where I sang and performed in the shows and performed in comedy skits and whatnot. So
somehow this doesn't surprise me.
I know, sitting here in a Cleopatra wig. But no, it's been an interesting ride. I've met a lot of people along the way. I've also done some background acting as well for things like The Handmaid's Tale, Designated Survivor, things like that. So I've seen some interesting things.
I've seen things.
I've met some people who would do things. Yeah. Wrote a book a year and a half ago. And
which is an excellent book, by the way.
Thank you very much. I enjoyed yours too. I'm so glad it's out. People can finally get their hands on it.
It's the Mutual Book Appreciation Society.
Yes, definitely.
So my next question for you is the question that you're not supposed to ask ladies.
Okay, go ahead.
Which is, how old are you?
I just turned 52 on February 22nd. So this is fresh. I'm a fresh 52-year-old.
Fresh 52-year-old. Now, I knew it was safe to ask that because you were very open about turning 52 on Twitter.
Yes.
It wasn't a big secret. You were quite open about it. So why were you so open when so many people are a bit reticent, particularly ladies, particularly people, I think, over 50?
Well, I think you know what it is. On Twitter especially, I have little wig hair sticking to my lips right now. So
you can take it off if you like.
No, I'm going to go the distance. You see on Twitter, you see the young folks complaining about how old they are when they're only in their 20s or 30s.
Yep.
And it does drive me a little batty, right? Where really, you're not old. Neither am I. If you're saying you're old, then what am I? I'm not.
Exactly.
So that was the whole point of being open about it because,
I think a lot of those are people trying to get attention for so you look beautiful kind of stuff, and it's like, yeah, okay.
As well, it makes me laugh too when they say, "Oh, I rolled over in bed and pulled a muscle at 32. Is this what my 30s is going to be like?"
Oh my God.
We pulled a muscle in our 30s. We would brag about it and say we had a good night, right? So, yeah.
Oh, classic.
Different generations.
Yeah. We've established you're 52. How old do you feel?
Probably late 20s. Legitimately late 20s, because by then you knew what was going on, and late 20s for sure. Not even 30s or 40s, late 20s. I would joke about it. My son would always maintain, "No, you're turning 24 again this year." That's what he would always say, but now he's 23, so he had to up that now.
Because it's just weird otherwise.
Yes, it is.
Now, when you run into old school friends, do you ever think, "Oh, that can't be right. They look so old"?
I'm finding strangely with my grade from elementary school, our year seems to be doing very well for some reason. Whereas if you go, sometimes you go up a year or two and you're doing the double take saying, what, you must have had a rough life. Sometimes you see people and say, what happened? Right.
Yeah.
But so far, so good with my grade, it seems. There must have been something in the water, the fountain water that year.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Because I catch up with some old friends. I hadn't seen them for many years, and suddenly, out of the blue, about 5 years ago, we started catching up. And I think I look in the mirror every day and I just see what I see, and you tend to get used to what you see.
Yeah.
But when you don't see someone for 20 years and suddenly you walk into them, it's just like you're shocked because, oh my God,
you do
just look
picture
so
them
old.
like the last time you saw them, right?
Yeah.
You do. Even movie actors, if you hadn't seen them in a while, you see them in that movie from the 80s and you see the live version, it's a little bit odd. Yeah. Some people age differently, I find.
Yeah, that is true. When you were younger, I mean, probably, let's say a teenager, how would you have described an old person? What would your criteria for an old person be?
I was the youngest of 7 by a long shot. The one closest to me were twins, and they're 7.5 years older than me. So my eldest is 15 years older than me. So I always considered them old because I was that much younger. So I can remember vividly the twins becoming 17, and I was, good God. 17. I can't believe it, right? But the older you get, that number changes quite rapidly, right? What you consider old.
Okay.
My mom, actually, there's a funny story. My mom was at a bus stop once, and a woman with a walker came in moaning and groaning and saying how rough life was, and, oh, you don't want to get old, and she asked, well, how old are you? And turns out my mom was 10 years older than she was, right?
Oh, wow.
So you just, it's an attitude, right? Sometimes.
Definitely. One of the things that CJ and I have found out is that even though most people who are sort of over 30 tend to identify as being slightly younger than their years, there are some people, particularly people with chronic health issues, who feel older than their years. So that sounds like that lady might have been obviously identifying as someone older than your mother because she just felt old.
You throw pain in, pain changes the game. Anyone with chronic pain, I feel for them. That's an entirely different beast, right? So
yeah, for sure.
Assuming you're healthy and doing all right, then you can do the old attitude adjustment for youth. But when you're in pain, it's different. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure about that. So how would you describe an old person now?
Age-wise or just in general?
Well, I guess both, I suppose, because obviously when you were young and you're thinking your siblings were old, you would have thought that someone who was over 50 was absolutely ancient.
Yeah.
So, so now you're over 50. What's old to you?
I would say anyone who makes it over 80 deserves the elderly title, I think, because so many 60-year-olds, 70-year-olds, they're still very active now. And with all the medical advances, you can be, right?
Yeah,
so,
for sure.
Yeah, I'd say over 80 would be old to me.
Yeah, and I remember once I used to work with my father before I became a teacher, and he would have been in his early 60s when a customer came in and said, I came in the other day and I was talking to an elderly gentleman.
Oh, no.
And I went, you're kidding. That you think 60s is elderly. I mean, elderly to me is, like you just suggested, over 80 or something, maybe late 70s. But yeah, so that I was like, oh my God, he thinks my dad's elderly. So do you think it's different making friends now compared to when you were younger?
Yes, the opportunities are different to make friends. Like now, a lot of it's online, obviously. Unless you join a club or do something, join a team, playing a sport, I think it's a lot harder to make friends when you're older. People are more readily available when you're in school and there's only so many people you can go through in your career, at your job, right? There's a limited number of people usually. So it's trickier. And I've often said there should be an app for that. And there probably is. I'm sure there is, like Tinder for friends, right?
Yeah.
Swipe right. Yeah. But it's tricky.
That person doesn't look funny enough.
It is harder. And then, the pandemic threw everything.
Absolutely. Yeah. So when you find yourself in a group situation, who do you gravitate to?
I gravitate to whoever's sitting on the sidelines looking uncomfortable, because whoever that is. I'll go chat with whoever's looking like they're not having the best of moments, and I just try to make sure they're doing all right.
They don't know what's about to hit.
I know. Especially with this hairdo. My kids would say they picture me having friends their age, actually. A lot of they do. They say younger. But I do. I like growing up, I had an elderly British neighbor next door, Mrs. Potter, and she was great. So I don't know. I think I'd have a range, Yeah. Yeah, I don't think it would matter.
I certainly found the thought of turning 50 quite traumatic.
Did you?
I never found sort of like 40, 30, anything traumatic before, but suddenly for me, 50 was really traumatic. How did you cope with 50?
50 wasn't bad. It happened during the pandemic. So it was an interesting, I had family do a drive-by because it was at that stage where you were limited to how many people you could be around. But 52, this last one, just last week, has hit me because my dad passed away at this age.
Oh.
So because of that, this one has been, on the calendar because I know that's when he passed away. If I make it another couple months, I will have passed him, Wow. So it is on my mind.
It's really resonant, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah. Okay.
It is. So that's what stuck with me for the early 50s. I'm okay. Now, my mom, I have to beat 84, so I have a distance to go.
You've got a fair way to go. So past this sort of milestone, you got a way. That's good.
Yeah.
Did your life turn out the way you thought it would when you were younger? When you were sort of in your 20s, you sort of thought where you'd be when you were 50. Are you there? Is it different to what you thought? Is it this? What's it like?
I think I've done a lot of what I think I would like to do more traveling. If I could add some more traveling in, then I think I'd be a little more satisfied. So once I get going on that, I'll feel like I've done what I kind of set out to do. I want to see more in person rather than just relying on. You get to see a lot online now, but I'd rather experience things in person.
Oh, sure.
That's the thing I find too. I think when you're younger, you want things, and when you're older, you want experiences, right? Because you see the value more in that rather than having the latest whatever, right? So
yeah, I mean, I find now because I've been desperately trying to declutter this place, and I'm just throwing out things that I was falling over myself to acquire. I do have things that I do value. There's no doubt about that. But they're not necessarily the things that I really was desperate to get at one stage. Sort of decluttering big time, and not in a Marie Kondo does it bring joy way, but more just in this is a piece of shit. Why do they ever want this?
Yeah. That's true. I've got a pile of that too.
Yes.
Yeah.
So yeah, and I mean, I did a lot of traveling before I got married,
Yeah.
and then after that, really haven't traveled very much at all. I'm desperate to get traveling, and I was probably in a position to start traveling just as the pandemic hit.
Yeah. I mean, that put a real wrench in the works there for a lot of people for various reasons, the pandemic. So,
Oh, sure, for
yeah.
sure.
Yeah. But no, I'm with you on that. And yeah, things become less important for me anyways.
I don't think people realize when they're young how much your children mean when you're older.
Yes. Well, though my oldest just moved out
Yeah,
to start his life, not just to go to school. His career's in Toronto. He just moved out yesterday.
yeah.
So it's a bunch of steps you take along the way that lead to them leaving, right?
Yeah, exactly. I think after about 13, there seems to be a series of some milestones that distance you from your kids to the point where you're quite happy to see them go. Various things where they're asserting their independence, and eventually, where when they do go, it's not as big a wrench as it would have been had you still had quite the same relationship as you did when they were sort of 12.
You know it's time. Like you do. You know it's time.
Yeah.
It's their time. It's time for them to do their thing and figure it out. You do. You hit that point where okay, you know it's time, right? But still, I was so good. I was so good all yesterday, all day. Because I'm excited for him. I'm ready to see him go even. But I'm cooking dinner in the kitchen last night, going. Yeah, so there's that. There's no training for being a parent. You can get as many books as you want, but you got to wing it the whole time, and you're doing the best you can, and you have a newfound respect for your own parents when you become a parent. That's for sure.
The first time sort of the words come out of your mouth that you know you've heard from your mother or father's voice, that's a sobering moment when you...
Yeah. That is something my mom would have said, yes.
Yes, absolutely. I can just hear her saying it. So you were saying when you were younger, you did a lot of creative, entertainery kind of things.
Yes.
Do you miss those things?
I will still do some things, but some days I do. Not all the time, though. Some days I feel like I should be doing more, but for the most part, I'm good with what I've done. So if I ever feel the need to do something crazy, I'll just do a little Cleopatra skit or something and throw it on the internet and then get that out of my system.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, no, there's not anything that I feel I absolutely have to be doing. That is all consuming. I did it and it was fun.
So as a person of your age, you're not censoring yourself.
So ominous of your,
of your age. I can't say advanced years.
Not unless you want something thrown at the screen.
Well, if you're of advanced years, God, what am I? The question I was going to ask you was, considering where you're at in your life, and that's a nicer way of saying it.
Yes, it is.
Are you censoring yourself somehow because you're at a certain age, or are you just doing what you want to do?
You know what? I do have a bit of the wild in me. I'm not going to lie. I do have a bit of the wild in me. And so when you have kids, you kind of have to contain that a touch, because you do. Now that they're old, they're all considered adults in Canada. There's sometimes where I get that little bug, that little tap on the shoulder, like you should be doing something crazy right now. But we'll see. Life is short. You got to put it all out there. So
I totally agree. Agree.
Mr. Author.
Yes. Well, I mean, I didn't start writing till in earnest. I wanted to for years, but I didn't start doing it till I was well into my 50s. So when did the idea of writing come to you?
During the pandemic, I got miffed because of all that was going on global news as far as Black Lives Matter movement had to take a real jump in there because of all the insanity going on. So the racism, the bigotry, it pissed me off. So I tried to think of what angle I could hit it at. And I've always written funny little things for friends, right?
Yeah.
So it wasn't a big leap for me to sit down and actually focus in. So I did that. And that was my way of hitting that part of what was going on. It was a good, just to help people escape and help me escape and do some damage without being arrested for it.
So that wasn't a long-term goal. It wasn't something you'd always desperately wanted to do?
No, and I feel bad about that because I see people in the writing community who it's their calling, it's their dream, it's everything they've wanted. That's never been the case for me. If something interests me, I'll do it. It's not one thing. It's a bunch of things that come along throughout the years that would be interesting to try. I'm going to give it a whirl. That's very much me. So I wouldn't say it was a all-consuming goal of mine. But once it came out pretty quickly. So now the sequel.
Working on that.
Yeah.
Yes, I sent you a message the other day asking how far off that was, because you actually have a cover already. So
that was me kicking my own derriere to get moving, right? It was like, if I have a cover, I better get this done. So I've had people read it, and I know where I need to go back. And it's not completely done, not even close. But the angle I took, I'm going to change it. So it's going to take a little bit.
And is there any other sort of entertainment boxes you're going to go to now? You've been an entertainer, you've now written a book. What else is there for Sheila Young?
I think the pipe dreams, the dreams that are probably out of reach, but it would be really cool if they happened, is if someone read Mac and decided this would be a good series, or, or same with the sequel. But that's out of my hands, really. It's whether someone actually sees it and reads it and decides it's, so that's not really something I can necessarily work on. No, it's just right now I just want to make sure the 3 kids are on their way and good to go and, ready for whatever's coming. And then I think it's just going to be about traveling and seeing more and connecting with good people, right? You say, that's what it's all about in the end,
Yeah. You've got to balance your responsibilities and everything like that with this creative side. I think that's what I find anyway. There's always things I want to do. Like back when I was young, I was in a band and did all that kind of stuff. Yeah. And that was where I thought, but I was really not really good enough to do that and be successful. Whereas I think I'm at least good enough to writing to do something.
And it changes for people as they discover new things along the way, right? They don't necessarily know about what they're going to be good at back when they're young. They have to be exposed to it.
Yeah, well, so it's funny because that's the one good thing about writing, or one of the good things about writing is that you can write, and it doesn't matter whether you're not sort of early 20s and sort of looking studly or anything like that. I mean, okay, it's one thing if you're the Rolling Stones and you've been doing it for 60 years, but if some guy turned up now playing music and looking like
Keith Richards,
you're not going to be successful. So that's the one good thing about writing is it's something you can do, and because you're kind of in the background.
I admire when you see the 80-year-old who gets their degree, who goes out and does it. You always see those news reports, but no, you're right. And people who lose their job later in life, it's harder. You're competing against a lot of decades of people, and it's hard, and it shouldn't be, because honestly, you're dealing with people who have experience, who know what they're talking about usually depending on the field. But there needs to be an attitude adjustment, I think, as far as how people treat and who is considered old, right? I think we hit that as well.
Well, that's it. I think, I know I was talking to CJ, who's the other host.
I know, I listened to your first podcast.
Oh, okay.
I listened to the whole thing.
You poor thing.
I loved it. I love that you laugh at your own jokes. It was the best. Yeah.
We crack ourselves up. Don't we crack anybody else up. We crack ourselves up.
And now, a word from our sponsors. Let me take you on a journey through time and look at humanity's greatest ideas. At first we didn't know how to wear clothes or talk. Then we learned to make tools and weapons and megastructures. And then we learned to think. Humanity has done some amazing things. And yet still some people think the aliens did it. Spoiler alert, they didn't. From cave to Colosseum, these were the lightbulb moments in human history.
Lightbulb Moments in Human History by Scott Edwin Williams is not the history you were taught in school. And it's available now wherever books are sold.
I find too that with people who retire or who are near retirement, they go through a phase where they get depressed. They have depression because suddenly they're no longer principal so-and-so. They're just their name. Their job is done, and they identified so much as their job as to their identity. And all of a sudden that's gone. So a lot of people struggle with that. That's why it's so important to make sure you have your interests lined up and have a good sense of self before you hit that eject button from your career. Right?
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
CJ and I were talking about the people who would just retire and next thing they'd be dead because they just had no purpose anymore. It was keeled over. And that seems to be less of a thing now.
I think it still is a bit, people are becoming aware of it more so now because I think people aren't afraid to talk about it as much, like I'm not doing well. I don't have any goals right now. I don't have a purpose. Right.
Yeah.
And that's where that's what I swear to you, when the third one is done and moved out, I'm going to be sob, or dancing, one or the other.
One or the other. Kicking up your heels. Something you said there made me think people being able to talk now about things that they never used to. And I remember my father was very stoic and very, like nothing seemed to faze him. And I sometimes I think about the things that go through my head and the self-doubts and all that kind of stuff. And I'm thinking, he probably went through all those things.
Absolutely.
Never really even seemed like it. Like I'll talk to somebody, I'll go, oh, I'm feeling really bad today, or I'm just feeling a bit, or whatever.
Yeah.
My dad would never say that. He would never to anyone. I bet he didn't say it to my mother. I mean, I don't know that because obviously I wasn't with them all the time. But nevertheless, I kind of doubt it because he was just so. He projected this. I'm in control. He wasn't an alpha male in any stretch of the imagination, but he was definitely a guy who was in control, and he was never sick as far as I was concerned. Until he got older, he was never sick because he's never showed anything.
I think sometimes you're a product of your time. So people are always comparing the generations, Gen Y, Gen X, the boomers, everyone always compares all of it. And you really are, you tend to be a product of your time. And back then they were dealing with, going back further, World War II, they had to get through that. And then, dealing with the depression from that and so forth. And every generation has their little cross to bear, right?
Yeah.
So I think you're a product of your time oftentimes. So now we're seeing so much being aware of who you are and identity and mental health and everything that it doesn't necessarily jive with the old school where it was stiff upper lip, carry on, onward, here we go, right? So there's a clash there. You see it.
For sure.
And then we've got the cocky Gen Xers like you and myself who are just cocky.
Of course, yes. Yeah. Well, it's funny because, I mean, it sounds like you're very similar to me. I have older sisters, and the closest sister to me is 6 years older than me, and then I've got a sister who's 12 years older than me. And they definitely identify as baby boomers. Yeah. And I refuse to identify as a baby boomer. I am definitely a Gen X.
Gen X, yeah. You're on the cusp.
I am on the cusp, but I definitely self-identify as Gen X.
That's fair. Yeah.
So but I mean, and I think it makes a difference. Their attitude is very different to mine. Kind of like you said, what you're brought up with.
Yeah, you are. You're. It's what you're surrounded with, and it's hard for the older generations to understand when things go so far in a different way. It takes some time to wrap your head around what's going on for the younger generation, right? And with kids, my kids, they'll even say, you won't understand. You didn't grow up with social media. And they're right. They're right. We didn't have to deal with that. But we had our own things,
We sure did. We sure did.
But it's hard to compare.
I certainly hate it when I hear someone my age or older going on about, the in my day kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And not giving younger people their due. Did you ever see the Monty Python sketch where the Yorkshireman and,
Yes.
We grew up in a paper bag, a septic tank. Oh, luxury. Because we had it tough.
It's the classic walking in a blizzard to school uphill miles to school. Yeah. It's the classic.
And I think, like you say, you really don't know what they're going through. Like I obviously teach younger kids that social media has having an effect on kids even 10 and 11.
It's a beast.
Every year we have problems with WhatsApp groups, Discord. Kids are getting bullied online. Now, when I was getting bullied at school, and it happened, I used to be able to go home and get away from it.
Yeah.
And at home was a sanctuary. Now the bullying follows them home.
No, you're right. Home is not what it used to be, right?
Yeah. And then, of course, to throw into the fact that, like, I grew up in a home where both my parents were together, which is now not necessarily the norm. And I had it easy at home.
Yeah.
But I mean, who knows how my parents had it? Actually, I do know how my parents had it. They were one of those people who they were married for 70 years and died within 3 months of each other because they couldn't bear to live with each other, kind of stuff. Yeah.
Oh.
That's what they were like. But
that's hard to live up to.
It's hard to live up to. Well, I've failed in so many ways.
That's okay. Oh, wow. No, it is. It's hard for them. And yeah, people need to take a minute and acknowledge that it's not easy. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know, we've gotten off the track a little bit, but I do think that some people over 50 discount how hard it is for younger people. And I do think we've actually, in the same way that they view us in a sort of, we'll never understand, you don't get it kind of way.
Yeah. Dismissive. Yeah.
And that's the generation gap, I guess, which I never thought I'd sort of encounter. Like I don't think I buy into it as much, but I buy into some of the things.
Yeah, I don't even know if you can say generation. It's just the time of internet trolls. The time of internet trolls.
What's one piece of advice you'd give someone who wanted to stay young? So a person who's just turned 50 and they're going, "Oh my God, I'm so old." What could you give them to help them stay young?
Okay, if you're healthy, or even if you're not healthy, let's say you're not in pain, because I understand if people are in pain and they're feeling old, that's a different, like I said, that's a different story. If you're just dealing with life's regular shit storms, right? You've got to be able to find the humor when you can. Like, that's crucial. If you're able to laugh at yourself, laugh at your own mistakes, find the humor. It's hard to find sometimes, but if you can find just that little element of humor, it makes the world of difference to be able to deal with things, right? It doesn't mean you're laughing at them, you're finding a way to deal with it. So I find, for me, humor is crucial. And honestly, speak to younger people. Don't speak at them, speak to them, learn a bit from them, hear what's going on with them. Because I find a lot of people make that mistake where they're hell-bent on being the superior older person and they don't take the time to listen, like really talk to them, not at them. And find the good times. They're there. You got to take the moments to have the good times, no matter what they are. Make the connections that you want to make and try to keep the toxic people out of your life at a distance if you can. And that's about it, really, Yeah,
that sounds like good advice to me.
Thanks, man.
Okay, last question and I'll let you go, Sheila.
All right.
What was the last popular culture thing that there was a major anniversary of that you've just gone, oh my God, I was 15 when that happened?
There's a lot. There is a lot. I don't even know if I can even go pop culture. It's just finding out that someone who is, someone who is 23 was born in 2000. Things like that are blowing my mind.
Yes.
Right out of the water. The big pop culture. The whenever anyone says that, 9/11 always rings a bell right away. That was so big, and I had a not quite 2-year-old and an 8-week-old at that time, and so now they're in their early 20s. So. Again, that seems like just yesterday. So, those things, it boggles the mind completely.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Because for me, it was probably the Sydney Olympics, which was in 2000.
Yeah.
And because that was just such an amazing couple of weeks. It was thrown into high relief by the fact that a year later, 9/11 happened. So we were just dancing around, having fun. It was just like fun. Nothing bad could happen. This is like the best time ever. And then a year later, the shit hit the fan.
Yeah.
And that's 24 years ago. Yeah.
It's crazy. It's crazy.
And what blows my mind when I think about things like that is I remember when I was a kid, you'd have your parents' friends not talking about the war. And the war was like a million years ago. The war was probably just as close then as, say, 9/11 is for us.
Yeah, it's mind-boggling. Time speeds up the older we get, Scott. I swear it does, right? Yeah, it's crazy.
I said it was the last question, but I'll ask you one more. Okay. Where do you see yourself in 10 years' time? What's Sheila Young going to be doing? Assuming that she's not sort of exploded.
I will have written a few more books for sure. 100%. I will have traveled more, assuming all goes well.
Yes. Fingers crossed, wood touched, all that sort of stuff. Yeah.
Honestly, I can't wait to find out. Your guess is as good as mine.
Yeah.
I don't know. I
don't know. I think that's the bottom. I think one thing that the last probably 15, 20 years of my life has taught me that it's no point getting too married to the idea of what you think your life is going to be, because it doesn't turn out that way.
It's like a birth plan when you're pregnant and they say make a birth plan and you're supposed to give them your ideal. Like, I would like to be hit with the epidural so I feel nothing and, do what you got to do, right? Or the alternative, I want to be all natural, don't do anything.
Yeah.
Ridiculous. You don't know what you're going to be going through at that time. You don't know, right? So I'm a pantser as a writer and I'm a pantser as a person. So we'll see what happens. I'm open to a lot of things. So we'll see what happens.
Okay. For the uninitiated who are not in the writing community, what's a pantser?
It means you don't really have a set plan when you set out to write your book. You just write what comes out of your fingertips and it turns into a story. Whereas people who are plotters have it all planned down to the chapter, down to the word, down to, they have a big organized plan, whereas a pantser just flies by the seat of their pants.
Absolutely.
So that's very much me, the free spirit. So we'll see what happens.
And I think I used to be a plotter and definitely a pantser now, because in life. And to a certain extent in writing, but definitely in life. I think there's no point making plans when you don't even know what's going to happen tomorrow.
Yeah, I think a lot of people should have learned that the past couple of years. You got to roll with it when you can, right? And see what happens. For sure. Take your chances. Good. No crazy questions, Scott. I'm so impressed. I don't know what I was expecting.
No, well...
You're very good.
Even though it's meant we're very stupid sometimes. It is meant to have a point.
To be helpful.
Yeah. And the fact that a lot of people are going through the same kind of thing, and I think the more we talk to people and each other and all that, we realise that, in fact, it's not like we're not the only ones. And then it developed into the whole,
we should do a podcast.
Well, and when in the initial part of the podcast was we thought we were weird.
No, it's universal, because I listened to that first podcast and that is universal, I think, for a lot of the things you two are thinking and saying. A lot of us are thinking and saying the same things. Absolutely.
Oh my God, that's so interesting. Really, Sheila?
I told you I'd cut you in, CJ.
I didn't think that would happen.
Well, it did.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So that was one of the big things we found was we're weird, but not as weird as we thought we were.
It's a good weird.
Good weird. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.
And it's great talking. It's actually talking face to face for a change. It was good.
I know, it's bizarre, isn't it?
I mean, I feel like I'm like this doesn't seem unusual. It feels like I know you.
I wasn't nervous in the slightest. I knew it would just be like chatting.
Yes.
Thank you, God, for interviewing me today.
Okay, so this week in Ask the AI.
Ask an AI.
Hi, ChatGPT. What does Sheila's think about aging?
As an AI language model, I cannot generalize the thoughts and feelings of an entire group of people such as Sheila's. Assuming this term refers to women from Australia, each individual has their own unique thoughts and feelings about reaching the age of 50 and beyond. However, some studies suggest that women over the age of 50 tend to feel more confident and empowered as they age. Compared to their younger years, they may have gained more life experience, wisdom, and perspective, which can help them navigate challenges and enjoy life more fully. Of course, there may be some women who feel apprehensive about aging, or who may face age-related challenges such as health issues or societal ageism. It's important to recognize that each person's experience is unique and should be respected.
So you said in the beginning that the question wasn't going to be what do Sheila's think about aging.
I didn't say that, actually. You asked me if it was going to be, and I sort of went, So technically I didn't lie.
Thanks, AI. Thanks for nothing.
Yeah, just about as bad as you thought it was going to be. So, what's happening in You're Not Helping this episode, CJ?
I looked at what's the impact of being over 50, because that was what we discussed. We were going to talk about this episode before you decided to go off and do a rogue interview on your own. But let's not focus on that part of the story.
It's forgotten already.
So I had a look at Quora. I don't know. If anybody knows the proper way to pronounce that, feel free to write in. Essentially, it's about people ask questions, other people answer it. So it's like your Ask AI segment, but with actual people. Well, although some of the answers might probably argue that. So, so I curated and collated some of the questions. Here's a couple that start off the You're Not Helping. So this is people asking questions that are presumably looking for helpful answers. Question number 1. How do you deal with being over 50? Okay. Answer. Pretty much the same way I dealt with being over 30 and over 40. Live my life. What else do you think I'd do?
Well, I suppose that's there is a certain Zen logic to that.
Well, yes, it could have done without what else do you think I'd do at the end. Yeah, with the implied you idiot. Now this is the person that I mentioned at the beginning. So they've got 7,700 answers that they made and 9.7 million answer views. Now this, I think, potentially highlights the whole thing of why does society view people over 50 the way that they do. So the question is it better being in my 50s than in my 30s and 40s? Right. Reasonable question. Answer. Considering the amount of people past 50 who have little to no retirement and the state of the economy and everything else going on, as well as a heightened mortality rate from COVID, I'd say probably not.
That's a nice positive outlook.
Yeah. I think that qualifies quite nicely for you're not helping.
You're definitely not helping. Definitely not.
No.
Helping.
This one was just a bit of a random one that I thought was odd. What do you like most about being over 50? Grandchildren. I have 5 at age 65, that's somebody who's obviously started having children quite early to have 5 65-year-old grandchildren.
Yes, if they're 65-year-old grandchildren. Yes.
Then there was a few that kind of fell into the category of just aging generally. Is 50 years old the start or the end of your life? The answer. The day you were born was the start of the end of your life.
Yeah,
Can't argue with that.
you cannot argue with it. There's absolutely no arguing with that.
What is one important thing you need to know when you hit 50 years old? Presumably not when you hit a 50-year-old. When you hit 50 years old. Answer. You can't argue with the logic in this one. Statistically, you've reached a milestone, which means your chances of hitting 80 are greatly improved, hold questions, over people who didn't make it to 50. I'd say statistically they're probably infinitely improved
Infinitely, absolutely infinitely improved.
over people who didn't make it to 50.
Unless they were resurrected and set back on the path. Like Walt Disney might, once they unfreeze him. No?
But wait, there's more. With every decade, your longevity projections increase. So, if you hit 80, you definitely hit 90.
Yeah.
Well, unless you didn't make it to 80. But following the same logic, if you've hit 90,
And so on.
and if you're going to hit 100,
Yeah, just keep on surviving.
yeah. So I think I've just found the way to live forever.
Which I suppose,
Yeah.
again, makes sense.
Nice work. Thanks, Cora. Another important thing about you need to know when you hit 50 years old, the ticking clock is a powerful motivation to create, get healthier, and simplify. Bonus, the alternative seems sketchy.
I would agree with that. I think that has motivated me to do a few things, for sure, the ticking clock.
So also maybe those two kind of fall into the maybe you are helping a bit.
Yeah, they're helping a bit.
This one's, I want to put this in it's maybe helping, but so this is an answer to the question, just to remind, what is one important thing you need to know when you hit 50 years old?
One important thing.
You cannot eat as much as you did as a younger person.
Mm-hmm.
Eat regularly. So we're already past, was one thing, now we're at two. Food nourishes your body. Can't argue with that. Watch what you put in your mouth. I feel that this person's on a bit of a theme.
Well, there's other things you can put in your mouth that aren't food.
Avoid bad foods and possibly other bad things that you can put in your mouth. Well, actually, maybe this follows on. What you put in your body affects how you feel.
For good or for evil.
Bad food makes you feel bad. Eat the best food you can.
So this is advice from a dietitian, or
They seem to be stuck with a particular theme. They finish off with, if you're emotional, don't go near food.
if you go near food, don't be emotional.
I'll finish off with this one that took a very weird downhill turn,
Okay.
which was also one important thing you need to know when you hit 50 years old. There are 14.
14. Okay.
14. One important thing.
Right.
When younger, we make various choices without the future in mind. That's true, sage
Yes.
words. Sometimes these choices bite us in our midlife. And I like the fact that they've called over 50 midlife.
It's a bit sort of living in denial, but yeah, okay, I'll pay it.
Well, it kind of goes back to episode 1 where people said, I'm 60, I'm middle-aged.
Yes.
So these are some of the things one might regret when they're 50 years old.
Okay.
Number 1, marrying the wrong person.
Yes, I constantly regret that.
I'm not going to go through all of these.
Right.
Because there's 14 of them.
Right.
Takes a very rapid downhill turn. Number 4, the child you aborted.
Oh, jeez.
Number 5, the child you rejected.
Or the child you wish you'd aborted.
Number 6, the marriage you destroyed.
I didn't destroy any marriages.
Well, or did you? Let's delve into this one a little bit deeper, I think.
Yes.
So you get married to your good fiancé. The first months in marriage were good, but shortly after, you started having affairs. Months after. Not years, not decades. Phew. Who's got that kind of attention span? Number 9, the time you wasted being a couch potato.
Definitely.
Giving excuses and pursuing meaningless things, like making podcasts, I guess. You'll never get that back.
Oh, that's true.
The dreams and talents you shelved.
But it's all sounding very, it's sounding very dark and This is the final thoughts of a man who's about to plunge a knife into their chest or something.
Hold that thought. 11. The name you defamed. When you look back at your path and you see the mud you threw at your own name, the shame you attracted, and the little value you've added to the world,
What the hell?
you will regret.
I think this person, my God, this person, what a life this person has led. Who has those regrets? I have some of those regrets. I don't have them all.
I think it's probably somebody who went near food when they were emotional.
Well, it's hard to digest. When you go to bed after you've eaten cheese particularly, you have bad dreams. So maybe there's a point there.
Whenever I'm bored, I'll load up on a camembert and grab a bottle of Tixie Licks and see where things take me.
Forget the shrooms. Go for the brie.
Finishing it off with number 14. The parents you despised.
But there might have been a reason you despised them. They might have been the ones who made you this bitter and twisted.
They were the ones that kept giving you food.
Yes. Bloody food. Damn it.
So there you go. Yes, so thank you. I'm not going to read out any of the names on those, but I think we've appropriately fulfilled the criteria of...
No, but they're not helping.
You're not helping.
Thanks for that, CJ.
You're welcome.
I think it's time to wrap it up. So, CJ, do you think we've answered our question?
The question is, why were you doing interviews on your own and not inviting me when it's What's My Age Again with CJ and Scott? Not What's My Age Again with Scott. Yeah, probably. But I think aside from the questions, I think Sheila answered probably all of the questions.
Fair enough. But what about the big question?
Is there a God? No, I don't think we answered that.
Well, definitely not. No, there's not any God. I've answered it. There you go.
All right, problem solved. Let's go for a slightly less big question then. Did we answer the question, do men and women experience aging in the same way?
Yeah, forget what the AI said. That was just an aberration.
Yeah, sure it was. Anyway, while we gave a brief overview of the effect of gender differences on aging, I think we've only just scratched the surface. So I'm going to head off to find some aloe vera. Aloe vera?
Yes, well, just be careful with that lubrication, CJ. Anyway, you're right. I think you're right. I think there are many PhDs in this, and one silly podcast won't answer this question. Nevertheless, I'd like to thank Sheila E. Young for lending us her credibility, at least for a short while. Now we've handed it back, we can be just as incredible as we usually are.
Thank you very much, Sheila. It was a very interesting interview. It's a shame I didn't get to meet you, and hopefully I will get to meet you at some time in the future.
And now, a word from our sponsors.
Listeners may recall that previously we've had the privilege of being paid to talk nicely about Elwood Scott's book, Funny You Should Ask. Well, no longer. Now we're being paid to talk about his new book, Colin Calls the Help Desk. This is a fun romp of the absurdities of corporate life. In fact, the subtitle is An Irreverent Tale of Corporate Life. There is no reverentness in this book. I don't know what that means, but I'm happy to continue with that. So, the key thing that I seem to have identified is that Colin is a koala. And sure, while we've all been in an office where there's a koala working, apparently some people have been confused by the concept. So Elwood has helpfully put together an FAQ.
Aha, that may answer a few questions then, because it's a frequently asked questions thing, so that would make some sense.
It makes much more sense than what I was thinking, which was that it stood for fucking arseholes on Quora, whatever it is. Question 1. I noticed there's a koala on the cover. Is this a book for kids? Answer. Definitely not. Colin Calls the Help Desk is a satirical look at office life, and that's our hero on the cover, Colin the Koala. Question. Is the koala a nickname, like Nicky the Llama or Jimmy the Finch or Oblong Doug? Answer, nope. Colin is 100% koala. Question, a koala? In an office? I thought koalas were naked, drunk, and always catching chlamydia. Answer, no, you're thinking of Brian from accounting. Colin calls the help desk. A hilarious and relatable take on the absurdities of office life. Available now at Amazon in all the backs. Hardback, paperback, and...
Hunchback?
Go on.
No. Hunchback.
Hunchback. Well, you can get the Hunchback version, but...
It's sort of a wraparound thing.
No, I got nothing for that. Jump onto Amazon. It's currently sitting at number 50 in the organizational culture bestsellers.
Oh, wow.
On Amazon, which
that's actually impressive.
I'm sure that when he pays us the money for this ad, he'll be pleased to hear the ambivalence and confusion and amazement in your voice.
Well, no, I'm happy for him. I feel it's.
Happy yet surprised?
Not surprised. No. I'd say no. Surprise is not part one of the emotions I'm feeling. But having said that, I know how hard it is to sort of get up there on the sort of those lists. So I think it's surprise from that respect. In that respect, not in any other respect.
Okay, cool. So check it out on Amazon. Colin Calls the Help Desk, An Irreverent Tale of Corporate Life by Elwood Scott.
So if you found society's expectation of over 50s doesn't align with who you are or how you feel,
and you're not mental,
or your chronological age doesn't match up with your subjective age, or if you just have a great over 50 story to share, drop us a line at
the Old Folks Home 69 at gmail.com, or any of the socials, which is some configuration of Old Folks Home and 69.
Jeez, we've really got to change that.
Yeah, I think it's too late for that now.
Anyway, this is me.
And this is me. Remember, when you listen, to make sure that you get more of this exciting, valuable, and beneficial content, you should follow, rate, and review all episodes.
And if symptoms persist, see your doctor.
Individual results may vary. Artist impression may not represent actual events.
Join us on the next episode of What's My Age Again? Say goodbye, CJ.
Goodbye, CJ.
Is that it?